Hello everyone, it's Glenda and welcome back to my channel, Creative Grandma. I hope everyone's having a happy crochet or knitting day. Well, today's crochet tutorial is for this super easy tweed ribbed beanie. This is a free pattern on Premier's website, and I want to say a special thank you to Premier for sending me the yarn and giving me special permission to start doing tutorials for their patterns on their website. I think this is going to be wonderful for anyone who does not know how to read a pattern. Hopefully when we go over the pattern and I show you how to make it, it'll help you start learning how to read those patterns. This is super fun, it's super easy, and I'm ready to walk you step by step through the process of making this adorable hat. So let's jump right in and let's get started on making this wonderful tweed beanie. Now this video is with special permission from Premier for me to start doing some of their designs on their website. Now this pattern was designed by the Premier Yarns design team. Now the sizes say women's and men, so there's two different sizes. The one shown is for the men, and when you read the instructions it says finished measurements. They have two sizes. The circumference fits a 21-inch head or a 23-inch head. So the 21-inch head is usually for a woman and the 23 is for a man. The length with the brim unfolded is 10 inches long or 12 inches long, depending on what size you want to make. The materials we're going to use today is the Premier's yarn, Premier Basic Tweed. So today I'm using one of the new colors. This is the light mauve tweed color 2003-09, and I'll put a link to the Premier Basic Tweed in the description box underneath the video. It also says you're going to need just one ball of yarn to make this hat. Then it's going to tell you you're going to need a size H8 or 5mm crochet hook to make this hat, or whatever crochet hook matches the gauge. You're also going to need a tapestry needle or a yarn needle so we can gather the top of the hat. So the gauge, you're going to get 16 single crochet by 18 rows equal 4 inches in the pattern. So to save time, check your gauge. So usually that means make like a 4-inch square and then measure to see if you're matching the gauge. The skill techniques used in this pattern, you're going to use a chain stitch, a single crochet. I'm going to show you how to do a back loop only single crochet, a front loop only single crochet, slip stitches, and then seaming and sewing the hat together. So these are very easy stitches. This is a very easy beginner skill level. The pattern notes this hat is worked flat and then seamed together. So basically you're making a rectangle shape. So up here you're going to see hat, and it has two different chain numbers up here. Chain 47 is for the 21-inch circumference hat, the smaller hat. And you're going to chain 57 chains if you want to make the larger hat the 23-inch circumference. So I'm just going to go ahead and make the smaller hat, so I'm going to chain 47. So I'm just going to move this paper aside. I'm going to attach my yarn to my hook, and you can use whichever method you want. Now, when I crochet, this is the way my gram taught me, and I always do it to honor my gram. I just prefer this method, and everybody has their own preferred method. So you could use Cody's preferred method using the slip knot, or whatever way you want to join your yarn to your hook. So again, if you look at the instructions for the smaller hat, we're going to chain 47. For the larger hat, chain 57. So you're going to yarn over, pull through the loop on your hook, and that's your first chain. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Continue until you have 47 chains for the smaller hat or 57 chains for the larger hat. I'm going to go ahead and work my 47 chains, and I'll be back and we'll start row 1. I'm back. I have my 47 chains made, and I'm making the small hat. If you're making the large hat, you should have 57 chains. Now what I like to tell everybody is before you begin your project, just do a double stitch count and make sure you have the correct number of stitches. For row 1, it's telling us to single crochet into the second chain from hook and then in each chain across. So we're going to go ahead and begin row 1. You're going to skip that first chain into the second chain from hook, insert your hook, yarn over, pull back through. You have 2 loops, yarn over and pull through 2 loops. You just made a single crochet. Single crochet into the next chain, single crochet into the next chain, single crochet into the next chain. Continue and work 1 single crochet in each chain across, and I'll meet you at the end of row 1. I'm over at the end of row 1. When you count your stitches, you're going to have a total of 46 single crochet for the small hat and 56 single crochet for the larger hat. So this is what row 1 looks like. We worked 1 single crochet across, and now we're ready to begin row 2. For row 2, it's telling us to chain 1, then single crochet into the back loop in each single crochet across, and then turn. So to begin row 2, you're going to chain 1 and you're going to turn your work. You're going to skip this beginning chain 1 and we're going to be working into the back loop. Now we're going to work our stitches working a single crochet into the back loop of each stitch. So we're skipping the chain 1 and this is your first stitch. This is the front loop. This is the back loop. You're going to skip the chain 1 and insert into the back loop of that very first stitch and then yarn over, pull back through. You have 2 loops, yarn over and pull through 2 loops. You just made a single crochet into the back loop. Go to your next stitch, skip the front loop, insert into the back loop and work a single crochet. Go to your next stitch, skip the front loop, insert into the back loop, and then work your single crochet. Go to your next stitch, skip the front loop, insert into the back loop only, work your single crochet. Let's do it one more time together. Go to your next stitch, skip the front loop, insert into the back loop, work your single crochet. So go ahead and continue and work 1 single crochet into the back loop of each stitch across, and I'll meet you at the end of round 2. I'm over at the end of row 2. I have 1 stitch remaining, so I'm just going to turn my work and work a single crochet into that back loop. Row 2 is finished. Now if you're making the smaller hat, you're going to have 46 single crochet, and if you're making the larger hat, you're going to have 56 single crochet, and they're all worked into the back loop. So your stitch count remains the same throughout the pattern. So now we're ready to begin row 3. For row 3, the instructions are telling us to chain 1, and then we're going to single crochet into the front loop of each single crochet across, and then we're going to turn. So let's go ahead and begin row 3. For row 3, you're going to chain 1 and you're going to turn your work. You're going to skip this beginning chain 1 and you're going to go over to the very first stitch into the front loop. This is the front loop, that's the back loop. We're going to go into the front loop only, and then yarn over, pull through that front loop, and then yarn over and pull through 2 loops. Go to your next stitch. Again, you have your front loop and then you have your back loop. We're going to insert into the front loop only of that next stitch and then work your single crochet. Go to your next stitch, insert into the front loop only, so you're going up underneath the front loop and right out through the center of the front and back loop. Then work your single crochet. Single crochet into the front loop only of the next stitch. Single crochet into the front loop only of the next stitch. Continue and work one single crochet into the front loop only of each stitch across, and I'll meet you at the end of row 3. I'm over at the end of row 3. I have one stitch remaining. You can see your last stitch is just that last teardrop, and then you're going to have that little arch going across the end of the row. So we're just going into this last stitch into the front loop only and working a single crochet. Now, if you're new to crocheting, you can go ahead and put a stitch marker in the last stitch, and you can put a stitch marker into the first stitch of each row. That way, when you turn your work, you're going to know this is your first stitch, and when you get to the end of the next row, you'll know this is your last stitch. So row 3 is finished, so let's take a look at the instructions. So when you look at the instructions, it's going to say repeat rows 2 and 3 until your piece measures 21 inches long for the smaller hat and 23 inches long for the larger hat. So go ahead, and to begin, you're going to repeat rows 2 and row 3 over and over until your hat measures 21 inches for the smaller size and 23 inches long for the larger size. So go ahead and continue. If you need help, just click back on the video. Repeat row 2 and 3 until your hat measures 21 inches for the smaller hat, 23 inches for the larger hat. Now, because I'm doing the smaller hat, I'm going to go ahead and repeat row 2 and 3 until I get to 21 inches, and then I'll be back and we'll finish making our hat. I'm back. I'm at 21 inches. I am making the smaller size hat. I am making the 21-inch hat. Now, my only concern is this is all the yarn I have left over. So if you're making the larger hat, you're going to have 10 more stitches across by 23 inches long. So I'm not sure if that's enough yarn to make the larger hat. So once you get to 21 inches or 23 inches, our instructions are telling us to fold the piece in half, line up the last row worked and the foundation row and slip stitch across, joining the last row worked to the first row. Fasten off, leaving a long tail. So what you're going to do, this is where you ended the last row. Now my work is sideways so you can see it in the viewfinder. So when you're working, this will be your last row worked. So you want to just take your work and you want to fold it so the last row worked is right up against your foundation row. And now we're just going to slip stitch right across that. Now at the end of the last row, you do not fasten off. This is the end of the last row. So you still have your loop on your hook, and then you just want to match it to the very first stitch going across the foundation row. So I'm just going to insert right into that first stitch, and then you just want to yarn over, pull through that stitch, and pull through the loop on your hook. And then I'm just going to do it one more time. I'm going to take it back through the first stitch on the last row worked and in through the first stitch. Yarn over, pull through the stitch, and pull through the loop on your hook. And then you're going to go to your next stitch, insert into the next stitch, match it to the next stitch on the foundation row, and then slip stitch through that stitch and through the loop on your hook. So we're working through both thicknesses. Insert into the next stitch, match it to the next stitch on the bottom piece, yarn over, pull through the bottom piece, pull through the top piece, and pull through the loop on your hook. And we're just going to continue in that manner across. Go to your next stitch, insert into the next stitch, match it to the stitch below, and then slip stitch through both stitches and through the loop on your hook. Let's do it again. Go to your next stitch, insert into the next stitch, match it to the stitch below, and then slip stitch through those stitches and through the loop on your hook. Let's do it one more time. Go to the next stitch, insert your hook, match it to the stitch below, and then slip stitch through both stitches and through the loop on your hook. So go ahead and continue and slip stitch all the way across to the end, and I'll meet you at the other end. So I just slip stitched the last row to the first row, and what this does is creates a tube to form the hat. So now when you get over to the end, you want to make sure that you take a long length. It's better to have way too much yarn than not enough. So I'm really going to pull a lot off right there. And make sure you have a long enough tail that you can weave through this end of the hat to gather to form the top of the hat. So I'm just going to fasten off. When I fasten off, I chain 2, and then I pull my yarn out, which is going to be very long. I grab, pinch, and pull down. And then we're going to use this longer length and weave in and out through this opening to gather for the top of our hat. So now, since we fastened off and we have our long tail, you want to thread this through a yarn needle. And now let's take a look at the instructions. The instructions are telling us to thread the tail on a tapestry needle and run needle under the end of each row at top of the hat, pull snug together and close the top of the hat, fasten off and weave in ends. So this is the top of the hat. We fastened off here after joining the last row to the foundation row. And now we just want to take our yarn needle and we're going to be weaving in the top of these row end stitches all the way around. So you're just going to take your needle and you're going to just come up through the first stitch and then out through the next, in through the next stitch, out through the next, and you just want to weave in and out through the top of those stitches. And I do about maybe 4 or 5 stitches, and you were just going into the top. I'm only grabbing 1 loop of yarn. If you grab 2, then it might just make it so thick. It's easier if you're only grabbing 1 strand on each row end stitch. And then pull that. And then I'm just going to continue around, grabbing 1 strand of yarn at the top of each row end stitch, working my way around the entire hat. Do about 4 or 5 stitches and then just pull your yarn through. Now I am not gathering my hat like that until I get all the way around, and then I'll pull it tight. So I'm just going to loosen that back up. So go ahead and continue. Just grab 1 strand of yarn, going in and out through the top of about 4 or 5 stitches at a time, and then you're just going to work your way around the entire top of the hat, going all the way around and then back over where we started. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and when I get back over where I started, I'll be right back. So I'm back over to the beginning. We started weaving here at this end. We weaved in and out through every row end stitch all the way around. And then it's telling us to pull tight. So we're just going to pull on this string and we're just going to gather the hat. Now sometimes you just have to move these stitches over until it starts pulling farther along. So you can see how it's starting to tighten up that hat. And then just keep pulling. Now be careful you don't pull so tight that you break your yarn. So again, I'm just going to stick my finger in there and try to make room for that to get nice and tight. And then once you see that it's getting tight, I want that a little bit tighter, so I'm just going to keep pulling. Now you've got to be really careful that you don't break this yarn, but you do have to tug on it pretty tight. Now this smaller strand of yarn is from my beginning chain. When I chain that first foundation row, when you make your beginning chain, I always leave like a little longer length. So I'm just going to tie this in a double knot to hold that in place. And then I just tie a second knot. And then what I like to do is I like to take my yarn needle. It does not tell you this in the instructions, but you can take your yarn needle and you can just go down through, grab a couple stitches, and then go up on the other side and grab a couple stitches. And this just helps hold that center in place. And I'm just going to pull that so I can help tighten that up. I just pull, and then I go through it one more time. And then I also like to take it in the opposite direction. So I went this way from left to right. Now I want to go from top to bottom. kind of like you're just making a cross. And then I'm just going to come over here, grab a couple stitches, go down through the hat, and then I want to come back up over on this side, grab a couple stitches, and this just helps keep that center together. Now I'm just going to come out through here, and then I pull it through once, pull it tight, and then I like to go through a second time. And then after I do that, I try to take a peek, and then I'm just see a little bit of an opening here, so I'm going to go over here and grab a couple stitches. And you can do this however you want. I just like to really secure the top of the hat and make sure it's closed. And this just helps really close that up because you do have a lot of stitches here. And then I just pull tight, and then I'm just going to go in the opposite direction and come back over here by this strand of yarn. I think that looks good, and then I'm just going to tie another double knot. And then you can just weave in your ends. So I'm just going to take my yarn needle, and because this is the wrong side of the hat, you can just go down through several stitches, however many stitches you want, and then pull it through. And then what I like to do is I like to skip one strand of yarn. So I come out here, I'm going to skip one strand of yarn and go back through. And then I'm just going to clip that off. And then I'm going to do the same thing with this other end. I'm just going to weave my end in. And you can just put it through any of the stitches you wish. I just run it through several stitches, skip a strand, and then come back through. And then I'm going to snip that end, and then we're going to fold our hat back right side out, and you'll see how the top is nice and secure. And then this is what your hat's going to look like, and then you're just going to fold the end up for the brim, and it looks like it's folded up pretty far. And that is how easy it is to make the tweed ribbed beanie. I hope you enjoyed today's crochet tutorial. If you enjoy these videos, please make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of the crochet fun here on Creative Grandma's channel. So until next time, stay inspired and happy crocheting. Bye everyone.